let's go through the last two sections. One is the economics of BNT and second is the FAQ. So to summarize again, the supply will be affected in two ways. It either increases or decreases. It increases in supply when there is an impermanent loss insurance payout and there isn't sufficient tokens to be paying out. So you need to be minting BNT to pay out the insurance. However, the supply could also decrease in two scenarios. Number one, when the liquidity provider withdraws their share of the liquidity pool and there BNT that's being minted, or there's BNT accrued as revenue, then that BNT will be burnt. The second thing is when a liquidity provider replaces the protocol's BNT, the co-investment BNT, and during that period, there are BNT being generated as part of the transaction fees, then those will also be burnt. So the concept is really a share buyback concept. Now, what about the BNT supply? So let's look deeper to understand the BNT supply. Number one, it increases. Now, let's look at the economics concepts and consequences for these different new incentive mechanisms in place. Number one, it increases the liquidity pool's depth in the pool for trade. So now people are more incentivized to trade because because there's impermanent loss insurance. So there's insurance. It means that in the worst case scenario, at the end of the day, I will get the same amount of tokens as I put in my wallet. So that means I have no downside. Whether I put my tokens in the wallet or if I put my tokens in this liquidity pools, the outcome, the worst case scenario outcome is the same. So the value of the amount of tokens in the pool or in the wallet will be the same. But there's upside. There's no upside by putting my tokens in the wallet, but there is upside in putting my tokens in the liquidity pool because I can earn transaction fees as my upside, as my returns. So because of that, this incentivizes liquidity providers to be instead of putting all their tokens in their wallets and sitting there for nothing, then they take it out and put it in the liquidity pools instead, because at least they have a bottom line downside, which is the same as your wallets, but they have a higher upside by earning transaction fees. So this really increases the depth of the liquidity pools for trade. How does that affect traders? Well, because number one, when there's more liquidity in the pool, then I have a reduced price slippage. So that means me as a trader, I'm more willing to trade in that pool because there's less price slippage. And if you have not heard about price slippage, I'll link it up in the video above, and you can learn a little bit more about price slippage. It's basically the difference between the amount that you're promised to receive and the amount you actually receive. And that's because your liquidity pool is not deep enough, so you don't have enough capital, and that's why your price fluctuates a lot more when a small trade occurs. So because of that, you have an increased transactions, because there are so many benefits, right? It is beneficial for liquidity providers, so these decentralized market makers, and that's good because you're hedging your risk. You don't have a big loss because you have insurance coverage. Number two, it's good for traders because by having more capital in the pool, you have deeper pools, you have less price slippage, so you want to trade more. And when you're trading more, it also benefits all these liquidity providers once again because they're earning transaction fees. So, and when all these all come together, then you also reduce the need to mint BNT tokens for insurance coverage. In fact, you're increasing the likelihood of BNT tokens being used because they are generating in transaction fees, and then when they're being taken over by whatever systems that we talked about just now, these revenues will be burnt, and then it will, like the share buyback concept, and it will feed back to the price of BNT. So that's the general idea and concept of BNT tokens. It's very interesting because the entire idea of these tokens is how do we use tokens to align incentives between these different participants or different agents in our ecosystem. And this mechanism looks like they've done it.